When we request a web page or any other asset from a web server, we first send a text-based HTTP request. This HTTP request describes not only what we're looking for, but information about our browser, capabilities, and cookies. The response is then sent back in the form of an HTTP response. The response starts with some text in a standard format describing the information about that response. We call these the headers, and they describe whether the request succeeded, the size and the type of the request, and any other information about that request. Following these headers is our actual data. For any text-based file, like an HTML page, a JavaScript file, or a CSS file, the content is in plain text. That's not ideal though. We have compression technology that can shrink data. If a zip file can reduce the size of some files, why can't we use it to zip up our pages and send them to the browser? We can. If we're going to compress some information going from a server to a browser, we'd better make sure that browser understands the compression we're using. Otherwise, we're just sending indecipherable garbage to the browser. Now, most browsers support at least a couple of schemes. The major ones are deflate and Gzip. Whenever a browser makes a request, as part of that request, it sends a header describing what types of compression or encoding it can accept. We call this the accept encoding header. The server can then use that accept header to determine if it's okay to send the encoded data instead of the raw data. Not all data should be encoded though. Text-type files benefit the most from this compression. Now, many environments do not have any compression enabled by default, so you should check to see if Gzip compression is being used. Let's see how. So the first thing you want to do is determine whether or not you're already gzipping or deflating your information. That is, you're sending your information compressed rather than uncompressed. One way to do that is to use the Chrome Developers tool. Here I have a very basic page that I have set up, and let's say I want to find out whether or not Gzip is enabled. Well, we could look through how the server is set up, but let's actually take a look if Chrome is receiving the compressed data. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open my developers tools. In order to do that, I'll open up my menu, go to tools, and go to the developers tools. And there's several different tabs here. The one I'm interested in is network. Now, if we didn't have this open when we loaded the page, we may have to refresh the page so the items in the network tab will appear. So I will do that. And now we can see the different requests that are being made. And since this is just a basic HTML page, only one thing was loaded. We can see how fast it was sent over and some information about it, but if we click it and dig in, we can find some more information. What we're looking at here are the headers, and this is under the Headers tab. So first we take a look at the request headers. The one we're interested in is to see if the browser is requesting encoded data. And we can see the accept encoding header here is accepting Gzip, deflate, and SDCH, another form of encoding. So that means we're asking for it encoded, and if we take a look at the response, we want to find the content encoding header in which we can see that it's being sent to us via Gzip. So that means we have our Gzip enabled. Now, we can take a look at any other site the same way. For instance, if I open up Treehouse, go to Tools, and again, we'll go to the Developers Tools. Let me go ahead and refresh. We can see, for instance, the main page here at the top. By clicking on it, we can get the information. Again, we see we're requesting Gzip, and we're actually retrieving it right here. And most of our files are going to have the same thing. However, not all files will. So for instance, here we can see that there was no content encoding flag, meaning that it was sent to us in plain text. And we'll often see that for images and other media. For instance, there is no content encoding on this piece of data either. If you find that you do not have Gzip enabled and you want to, it's going to be different depending on your environment. But if you're using Apache, which is very common, mod deflate is the tool that you'll want to use. It may already be installed. You may just need to enable it in an htaccess file or another server configuration file, and it usually looks a little something like this. Add output filter by type deflate, meaning we will deflate anything that has the content type of text HTML, text plain, or text XML. We can choose the other various types of plain text format that we want to deflate by adding the content types here.